Hello, welcome to Postcards 17. In Postcards 15, I did a retrospective of postcards that related to my old school, the college of Wandsworth, and it's received fairly favourable comment. So I thought I'd do another one, not involving postcards directly at all, but simply some books and booklets that I've got, old school magazines and things. If you're not connected with Lord Wandsworth, switch off now, or you're hoping for some chess stuff. There'll be lots to come in the future. There's lots to look back on, but for the moment, this is an LWC chinwag. The first book I'm going to show you, which probably is new to you, although it's not a new book, is Dear Osborne by John Matson. Mr. Matson was housemaster at Junior House, JH, for many, many years, much longer, I think, than anyone would be a housemaster these days. And having read up a little on him, his statements at retirement, blah, 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 to my surprise, when he came to the college, he didn't actually think he would be teaching. He just thought he would be overseeing and administrative, as an administrator. And he did actually latterly become registrar for the college. And I think Peter Booth took that over now, I don't know. Anyway, this is a book about Osborne House. I just have a little drink now. Pretend I'm not nervous, which I am. Osborne House is an extremely interesting place to go. I've been there twice. I'd like to go there again. It has a sort of colonial look, doesn't it? The towers and the flat top roofs. It is a mixture of so many architectural schools. Basically, and it's in the Isle of Wight. And in a word, John Matson went to Osborne House to convalesce. I don't quite know when, I'm sure the book says. And I have read the book, I'm not just wielding it. Whilst he was there, fell in love with it, so to speak. Queen Victoria's family life in the Isle of Wight. In fact, Queen Victoria died in Osborne House. As a little boy, I went there. And I saw Queen Victoria's death mask. And at the time, I was making cornflake masks. They put them on the back of cereal packets. And I was making these. And the two sort of congealed inside my little brain. And when I went back as an adult, many, many years later, 40 years later, or more, I suppose, I asked where the mask was because we couldn't find it. And not only didn't they know, we still don't know. So it would be very interesting to know what exactly happened to it. I quite strongly recommend, I'm in no position to criticize it, John's book, which, there we are. I don't suppose, with respect, it's still in print, but you can get second-hand copies. And if the school doesn't have one and they're watching this, the college, please get in touch because I may be in a position to let you have a copy. I have fingers in second-hand bookshops and charity places, so I'll probably get you one. It's well indexed. It's got bibliography. Look at that. John was quite an all-rounder, I would have thought. Talking about his time in the Navy and the Queen Victoria dying. It's quite detailed. I mean, here we have, well, over 160 pages. So it's a good little book. The next one I have more of a sentimental attachment to because I knew the author, I was going to say very well, but no, I didn't know the author very well. I knew him as much as I was able, and I always liked him. This is by William Lancelot Fryer. Bill Fryer there signed the book. I'd like to say that he signed it for me Actually, he didn't. I lost my copy. I don't know what happened. And this copy was given to me 5 or 6 years after he'd signed it by Simon Hill. So Simon, in Bulgaria now, if you're watching, thank you for what you did. And this is called From Orphanage to Public School, A Brief History of Lord Wandsworth Foundation, 1912 to 1968. It was founded in 1912. They probably had, I think they probably, 1911, they had some of the grounds marked out or whatever. And 1968 was when Sandy Henderson, who was then the headmaster and had been headmaster during the Second World War. So it's a very long time to be at the helm, isn't it? Retired, and Neil Henderson, no relation, and he's quite important without being disrespectful to say no relation, took over. And he was the headmaster when I was there. And I was there from 1970 to 75. But according to the records that they keep and the way that these things are described, I am a leaver of 77. And now the phone's ringing. Well, I'm not going to go and answer it. The designs here are by Douglas Wilson. And Douglas Wilson was the art teacher at Lord Wandsworth. And I remember him setting up the little displays, little sort of miniatures that he was working on with a view to having them inserted. This is an interesting book, forward by Sir Humphrey Prideaux, and it talks about the origin of the school, starting off with Lord Wandsworth himself, who was an MP. I think it was a London MP. I think that would be the best way to describe him. Sidney James Stern, Baron Wandsworth. Andrew Eborn, my disassociate, pointed out that, you know, Sidney James was great on the Carry On films. Well, for the sake of all those people like me that can't resist a joke, even in the most inappropriate moment, I even told a joke at my mother's funeral. I can't believe it. Sidney James Stern, Baron Wandsworth, was the founder, and he gave his name to it. I'm looking through for any photographs. There's a picture of Lord Wandsworth. There he is, looking like W.G. Grace or someone. I suppose really many Victorians have a certain status, possibly, who would afford them a beard. I know in Egyptian times, which I studied a little, they would say a beard for dignity. And here is a cartoon, the election poster for Lord Wandsworth, when, as Sidney James Stern, he contested for Suffolk's seat in Parliament 1891. And here is the handbill advertising the implements after purchasing the estate. And it needs the late Bill Fryer himself to say that we all joined hands and walked across the fields to pick up the loose stones, hence the expression for a punishment, raking. I don't know at Lord Wandsworth. I'd like to know if the expression raking still exists. If it doesn't, I think it should be reinserted into the language. But as the saying goes, what do I know? Here's the making of Gosden House, which was the girls' part of it, and was really re-affiliated when they went co-ed, which was about 35 years ago. Here we are, the late 1920s, and everybody traipsing out of the main gate, which remains, and the lodge behind it, which I showed before in postcards. There we are. I don't have a very steady hand. There. I don't know what particularly jumps out at me. Just take my glasses off. I suppose they're more like schoolboys as opposed to, as we were, we would wear long trousers and hacking jackets. They've got long trousers on too, but caps. I think increasingly that when it went over to an agricultural college, there was less academic interest, although there was strong interest in common sense, and rather like the Scouts, you know, that you could sort of keep a straight mat and so forth. Here's a chance for a joke. Here is Sir Daniel Hall, who gave his name to the Gavin Hall. There he is. No, he didn't give his name to the Gavin. Here are boys arriving at the county show, and here are grown men wearing school caps, which is what point I made. And here's the cricket pavilion going up in 1934. It was 41 years later that I was photographed outside there, having finished 113th in the senior cross-country run, which wasn't last. Simon Hill, once again I mentioned his name, in mock terror, came last. I thought that I would come last, and everybody did too. And I would have received an ovation because I was about to leave anyway, so it didn't make any difference. And Simon lost his shoe on the way round and stopped to look for it. It's one thing to lose it, that's a misfortune, but to actually stop and look for it. And here we have the converted library. What it was converted from, I don't know. There we are, the dining, there forever, you know, the dining hall has become the library, and the library has become the new gymnasium, and the new gymnasium has become, as of course you knew, the science block. And here is Sir William Gavin. There he is with his trusty. I should think he's got a trusty dog as well. It doesn't show that, but he's holding on to the gate. And it was him who gave the name to the Gavin Hall. And I raised the point, probably the only sensible thing I've ever said about the college, that the design of the Gavin Hall and of the two new, as they were then, 60 years ago, Hazelmere and Summerfield, still look to this day avant-garde. I know that the design of some of the college buildings at the block, I picked up on this because the Times, the Thunderer, was online, which it was now. All of it, right back to 1790 or something, was online. And I keyed in Lord Wandsworth College. It came up for something in the 1940s or some such. And it actually said criticism that the architecture there was a bit, you know, designs were a bit bland. And it was the same architect as worked only over the hill and far away at RAF Odium. So if you ever go to RAF Odium, which is largely in abeyance, but the buildings are there and there is activity, you will see, if indeed you wish to see, a similarity. Here's a picture of Sandy Henderson, Alexander. I did see him once and once only. He lived at Blounce, which is a little suburb, I'm tempted to say, outlying hamlet of South Warnborough. And South Warnborough is between Odium and Alton. And I did see him once and once only. And there he is in his younger day. I'm not going to go through every single picture here. Here we have the masters looking all in gowns. When I was there, they would all wear gowns for assembly. And there's one or two people here whom I would have known. Tweedy Stoddart, I did see him. He came back and divested himself, if I can use that verb, and ran around the athletics track. Mr. Goodlife, Mr. Orr, Peter Seelig, who I did know, and his wife, who was the matron. Mr. Smith, don't know him. J.L. Merriman, I knew him very well. And C.H. Hallows. I actually think he's C.E. Hallows, isn't he? Well, anyway, whatever he is. There he is as a young master. It's interesting that, in a way, if you stay for a certain length of time, it sort of means you won't leave. But, of course, the more ambitious, career-minded would have definitely have left, if that makes sense. Here are some boys. We're in the forestry project. There they are. I didn't know them. And here is Schoolhouse. and the dining hall there. That is largely unchanged, I'm sure. And here is the Gavin Hall, the avant-garde hall, where assembly is held and exams are passed and failed. Basically, and plays are put on and films are shown. In my time, all of these things and more happened. So this is a publication, the Lord Wandsworth College Foundation. If you can get a copy, hang on to it. If you can't, well, the information is used sparingly. Bill Fryer injects his own little anecdotal style. He couldn't really suppress his kindness and his good humor, I think. So there we are. Now, this is the school magazine, and it's important to stress this was for pupils who were actually there at the time. This is one of my copies. The coffee stain is added later. As you can see, this is really quite an artistic effort, and it throws emphasis on the sewing because it was primarily, though not in my time, very definitely not, agricultural college. Various things about music, something that interested me when I was there. The head of music has passed away about a year, 18 months ago, Philip Hildersley. So I say his name because I actually was in the same room as him. I always wanted to thank him for his endeavours and all that it gave me. And blow me down, I didn't recognise him. And afterwards was told, well, he was there. And I thought, well, I probably, there's 1 in a million chance I might see him again. Well, there wasn't, because he passed away. And so has Tony Whibley, who was my housemaster. Here's a write-up about something which was absolutely dreadful. Mull. The CCF went to the combined cadet force. 4th and 5th formers were conscripted, and 6th formers were, it was voluntary, particularly if you wanted a career in the army. Of course, that's a good idea. Hang on, a little water. To my amazement, I think that the CCF was about, even though I was, if not the worst, approaching one of the worst people at it, was the very making of me. And on the parade ground, I don't just think, I know that I became, possibly for the first time, a little bit of an adult. It was very difficult for me for all sorts of unspoken reasons, but the important thing was it wasn't impossible. And I came close to getting, into serious shit. But I didn't. That's the important thing. I managed to rise above it and to cope. Here's an interesting Inca bod. The glorious departed. The old trustees used to show people around in this car. And it's probably been there almost since the war. I know my mother, who worked at the college very briefly, made a joke that they used to bob along in it, going at about 5 miles an hour. Strong emphasis here on rugger, not a game. I quite enjoy watching it now. And there's the team with Greg Knight and the guys. There's lots of old, if you're interested in old sporting teams, particularly if even if all you want to do is spot yourself, well, the opportunity arises because lots of them are now online. I dare say in the time to come, all of them will be, including all the sowers. They probably are now already. Here's the 1977 one. I do remember when I left. I left in 75, but I kept in touch with a few guys, and a certain sadness that it was all ending. Here is a very important person in the history of the college, Raymond Bacon. We called him, he would have known this, though not to his face, Joe Crow. He was a pioneer so much, and he used to argue that the less able boys and more academically inclined which I would like to have been thought to be, though probably wasn't actually, should be excuse games. I don't think he meant you can ossify indoors. He just meant that, you know, you don't have to be forced to go out every day and pound, you know, the cross-country courses and everything. What he would have wanted was to steer a middle course whereby you did, say, extra study in the library or brought your studies up to date. And occasionally, very occasionally, I would do that on Saturdays. I don't suppose, no disrespect to anybody, that I was any good at it, but I sort of wanted to be, and this applies to Latin and physics, particularly physics. Here are various write-ups for the college, aerial photograph, and the head of house, who was a sick little boy. There were girls in my time, and I really do mean that. Here we are with Mark Farrow, as he was called, in the Royal Hunt of the Sun. I didn't see this. I actually contacted the college, Roger Davies, and asked if I could go and watch the dress rehearsal. And Roger came back to me via Simon Hill and said, yes, you can. Well, I never did. Here's interesting. Here's one of the three stepsons of Paul Davis, who was the second master latterly and also head of physics. This is his stepson, Simon Clements. And on the 11th of May, Simon Clements and Sir Peter Coulson, the well-known judge, jury, will be giving a little talk about, I think, the law, or what you will. So get in contact with the school if you're interested in that. I don't have the exact details, I'm burbling on, but I don't have the exact details, but it should be pretty interesting, and I presumably it'll be a Zoom meeting, something like that. Here is the headmaster in my time with Whitfield. As you can see, Marco Gorman here, and I think Bennett. I can't remember his first name. Yes. No, it says it's winners of the LWC Invitation Sevens. So Portsmouth High School, so it's not Whitfield, but it is the old headmaster. Well, my headmaster, Neil Henderson, before I was talking about Sandy. Here's Wally Davidson with his cricketers. Cricket was a game that I was never at ease with, as with so much, because I was always frightened I'd be hit in the face with that ball. If the game could have been played as with hockey, with the softball, I think I'd have been quite good in hockey, in the duffers. I was almost singled out. Even Tony Wigley wrote in my school report, he has enjoyed playing hockey this term, which was true, I had. I think it was because you have the stick, and it is as much offensive as defensive. Could be wrong. Anyway, here we have a sort of, I ran out of words, but a typical sort of 60s groovy lettering. And this is the school magazine for 1971, I think. Yes. And here's the school, the headmaster with the prefects, all of whom look to me now about as old as I am now. What a motley crew they are. And it would be their job to make sure that people weren't caught smoking or speaking or breathing or something. I never fell foul of any of them, though I did fall foul of masters on occasion, probably by answering them back. And this is a list of the prize winners, including Form 1 P.C. Warren, who lived in Odium and was a very dear friend of mine, and indeed known by all my family. And Peter passed away some years ago, so it is with a full heart that I read his name out. No apology is offered for that. Here is David Wolstenholme, who was one of the many Scots who were recruited by Sandy Henderson, and this bloke here, Mr. Irvine, similarly. And I used to see him in his latter days in Basingstoke, getting off the bus at the Skewers pub. We didn't acknowledge him because we thought perhaps he might be a bit deaf or something. It's not. It isn't always a good idea to tell people, you know, that you knew who they were. Here we have a group of smokers from outside. If David Coppin watching this, not in his time, but nevertheless, Coppin's Corner, Hannah's Corner. I recognise some of these guys distantly. I mean, it looks like they've got a kestrel. I'm sure they had more than a kestrel. There's a poem by Bill Fryer. He would insert these little into an oasis of Philistinism, and it must have been disheartening for him to think that perhaps many of these little grains did not bear fruit. Poem by Nigel McWilliams. Rain to a worm is like fire to a cat. When it knows it's raining, by ears or smell, I do not know. It crawls its way through the dampened earth like a man tunneling through water to reach fresh air. Up, up it goes, pushing its way through the soil, leaving a trail of pure, clean earth. And when its little head or tail, as the case may be, protrudes out of the damp, dreary dungeon, it sighs a sigh of relief to be out of the pouring rain. And that was written by a second former who was presumably about 13 or something. Hope you will agree with me. That's really good. There's some Latin here, which I will not presume to translate because the glossary has been provided by my lifelong friend, Mr. Colin Payton. So, Colin, if you're watching, it's in here. It's on page 30. Here's the sports hall, which I actually went back. I wish I hadn't. I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I do mean that. On Guy Fawkes night, I went back to Sutton House about 5 years ago, and the Guy Fawkes was beautifully organised and some really impressive fireworks and decent things to eat as well. But the fact remains it was near to the sports hall, and I was able to reminisce how, you know, I remembered before it was built, as if anyone can give two halfpence. But there we are. And here is the actor, Sir Julian Sands. Here he is with Simon Clements, known as Dickie, and Simon Woodhouse, who was a good chess player. They're not as good as me, but he was quite good, and Gwyn Davies there. And they were in the DAV, Duke of Edinburgh's award. And here they are outdoor scouting. And here is Keith Hunt, who was a friend of mine. Keith with big ears from Leicester, and Chris Letchford there, who became one of the top pods. And many years later, I saw Chris Letchford, and we had a little chat, which was, it's always nice, isn't it, if you see people and they have got a good word to say for you, and they did. Here's Paul Davis with the Met Meteorologists, and they are the famous Lambert and Van, I think. Lambert and Van became a sort of, I don't know how to describe it, just sort of a saying like bubble and squeak. The sort of thing you'd say if you were late, you know, Lambert and Van, Lambert and Van. Anyway, there's Lambert and Van. They were printers as well. I think that's where it came from. They were twinned in that manner. I think that's White, Jeff White. Here's more rugger, of course, which I'm not going to go into. And here's somebody doing the high jump. There we are. I'll show you one more sewer, and then we'll pass on. This is a sewer for 1974, so that was the year I was there the whole time. And since that drawing is bound to have been by a student at the college, I think you'll agree with me, but that's pretty special. The standard was very high. It's nice. It would be nice to think it was high in everything. And it's been edited by John Merriman, who was head of English and also housemaster at Schoolhouse. No longer with us, but nevertheless. Here are various prefects writing about their houses. I touched on that before. But this is of more interest. This is Hazelby and Summerfield. And as you can see, I touched on it earlier, the architecture, a modern look to it. These are not, you understand, classrooms. This is where people would live. Boarders would have dormitories, and in the more senior boys would have their own little rooms called cubes. And here is Mr. Kim Ridgeon, who has recently resurfaced, looking exactly like that, except older. And there's Guy Austin, another reprobate. And there's a little thing of him going around some aviation establishment, talking about the help he gave them, and with great pride and interest and unyielding enthusiasm. Here is a poem written by, I'm not going to read it out, Brian Johnson, who held the record for always leaving his textbooks about all over the college. I'm sure they're still to be found in corridors and waste bins and little cubby holes. He was forever leaving them around. Here we have the late David Dames and the late Roger Davies. Mr. Dames, DLD, was a French teacher, and Roger was classics master. And in the middle, James Harrison. And they are rehearsing for, I showed a photograph last time, Radigal by Gilbert and Sullivan. Various people at the back, including the little boy Shepherd, who also died recently. This young man here. It's obviously it is sad, at best melancholic, that I say that they have died. That's probably, you know, the last time which the college would have known anything about them, you know. So here's Mark O'Gorman, who isn't dead and is now called Mark Bliss, singing, and at the back the Radigal portrait, which is where the ancestors step from. And that's not a grammatical sentence. And here's a very good singer, Steve Holland. Many years later, I saw Steve in, I think, Question Time. Those days, I think it was with Robin Day. And he was in the audience and asked a question. So there you are. Various bits of Latin translation. And once again, Ode to a Meteorite, which fell upon the Welsh mountains in the month of January 1974. And what a surprise, it's by WLF, William Lancelot Fryer. And here is a write-up for a highly contested modern languages competition by Peter Whiteman. He won't mind, or even if he does, my saying he was called Monty Whiteman. Change of topic here. Something at the old block. I dare say a lot of that's changed. Maybe the tree remains. I'd like to think the tree remains. And here they all are, brass rubbing. Something you hear about these days. At one time, brass rubbing. I know my aunt got the bug for it. You would go over the, you know, with the indentation, and then you would lift the paper off, and then you would have it, and then you could cut it and mount it and talk about it and look at it. And the clergy were not averse to even sending you a bill, because I know that my aunt did some work. Obviously, you need permission. And then, blow me down, the curate, incumbent member, sent her a bill, which he didn't expect, though I'm sure she paid. Here is a very nice servant of the college. He won't mind, or maybe he will, my saying this, Mr. Christopher White, Chris White. I didn't know when I was at the college, I was far from being a scientist, but latterly, because we were both local inhabitants, I lived in Odium, he lived in North Warnborough. We got to know each other quite well, and my mother knew him also. hockey write-ups, cricket, cross-country, something particularly close to my heart. Nothing about chess. I was never asked to write anything. See if I can. Now, this is a completely modern invention. They're called girls. Now, I know what you're thinking. They aren't a modern invention. But it's a school like Lord Wandsworth. They were, heaven knows what happened. Here's the headmaster. I think his name's Mr. Power. There we are. Obviously, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, it's almost impossible for me to connect with him because I don't feel fear, and he's younger than me anyway. And here is somebody who was my tutor in Hazelmere, the ageless Mr. Peter Y. Booth. PYB. He became the president of the college. Here are various clubs and societies they've set up. And here is the late Tony Whibley there with various boys. Mark Robinson, I think. Yes, it's Mark Robinson. There, who lived at Kiss Cottage. Beautiful, and I'm not just saying that, a beautiful place that was forever flooding. Only things to remember, isn't it? And here is the reunion of my lot. If I can claim any ownership. The leavers are 77. And I will not embarrass myself by forgetting their names. I'm not going to read any of them out, except to say, I wish I'd had the guts to go. I know exactly where they met. It was in Covent Garden, down where I quite often you would go there and listen to various orchestras scraping away. But I didn't go. I was actually started off in Basingstoke intending to get there, and I wasn't feeling very well at all. These things happen. I was a bit stage struck. There is Peter Coulson, who became a knighted and also a governor, and I think his wife is still a governor, and he is a judge. So they were obviously, along with Julian Sands and Johnny Wilkinson, they are famous old boys. There's various members of staff coming and going, and little bits of news and lots of coloured photographs. With respect, probably of more interest to those involved than it could be to somebody who is decades out of date as I am. Just quickly, this is again another edition of the Sternian, nice and bright. And there is an aerial photograph of the college, centering on the Gavin Hall, which has been re-roofed, from what I can see. There we are. Thank you very much. There's other things I could touch on, anecdotally and so forth, but I'm not going to. I hope this has been okay, and I dedicate this to Sidney James Stern, Baron Wandsworth, and all that I remember about the college, good, bad, and indifferent. Thank you. I've been James Pratt, B72, Hazelmere House. Bye.